Hey everybody, what's up? It's Tipping the Scales. We're back consistently. What's up?
Excuse me, Mrs. Consistency. How you doing?
Doing good. You look cute. You look very vibrant.
Thank you. I got a couple little, I've been playing with these locks a little bit. I was like a little nervous, and shout out to Dom because she's like, I told you, she called me the next day. Was like, are you okay? You're good. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I've been playing around with it. So now I got them back, like pulled in a ponytail. And
got some in the front.
I got a couple of little up front. You see, I got different size beads and little, it's fun,
It's
and
fun.
I've been embracing the fun.
As you should. You should.
It's something about, I don't know, having your hair twisted in some sort of fashion, like you just feel more closer connected to your roots, and I love it.
I know. I feel back too. Finally got my hair braided, not by Dom, sadly.
Oh, Dom, she's a cheater, pumpkin eater.
I mean, Dom was gonna come here, but she changed her mind, so I had to find somebody.
She did tell me. All right,
yeah, but
so she couldn't come.
I had a photo shoot, so I had to get my hair done. So that's the only reason.
Nice.
But shout out to Fee. She did my hair. She's so awesome. So
it's cute. And I like the little couple pops of color. That's cute. Look at you. Living life on the wild and dangerous side.
We both are.
Ow.
Ow.
So today, while we're starting off, super cheery and happy as Shay and T always does, I think today's topic is a little more serious. And I think that it impacts more people than we know. I'm going to come from a personal experience, so going to allow myself to be vulnerable today. But I want to talk about anxiety and how many of us suffer from it in silence. And, what does it feel like? What does it look like? How do we deal with it? When does it show up? So I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because I think many of us, when people see us, like sometimes people can't see things from the outside. Like even I heard someone say, well, I looked at that person doesn't have any disabilities. And that, like, I wanted to turn around like, can you sit down in my chair so I can have a little chat with you? Like that was just so disrespectful to say. And disabilities are sometimes things that are just unseen. It's not something that you physically can see. But I do think many of us have different things in life that we battle with. And mine is anxiety. And I think the more stressors that I have in my life, the more like the dial turns up a little bit.
Yeah.
But now that, I've just been dealing with stuff with my health, and it's not, good news is it has not been life debilitating, but if things that I don't handle don't get resolved, it can be life threatening, right?
Right.
But because I've been dealing with so much fear and anxiety around certain things, it's really getting in the way. And I never seen it for what it really is until recently, maybe like 3 weeks ago. And I went in to have this one specific procedure and just couldn't have it. Like the anxiety took over and I panicked and my heart started to beat really fast. And, it was really very difficult. So I said, you know what, we should talk about it, because one thing, that we try to be and what we want our pod to be is a resource so that we're helping one another through very much tough times, because, we're kind of one family. That's how we like to look at it as such. And when you think about families are extremely supportive, and families should, kind of bond together and tackle those hard things. We just go talk about happy. We can talk about food. I love food. We can talk about all the fun things, but we got to at least have a brush with some of the tough conversations as well.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And it's crazy that you're talking about anxiety. As you know, Nafis, he is, working to get his PhD and working in these fields to try and help cope with some of these things. And he also suffers from anxiety himself.
Yeah.
And meaning, and what I realized too, is being his partner, is that anxiety is heightened when there's an unknown on the other end. right? When
Exactly. Like the
something is,
fear
yeah,
of the
it's
unknown.
debilitating fear of the
Yes.
unknown.
Mhm.
Being in crowded spaces, not, you know, your mind spiraling what could possibly happen. Not knowing, where certain things are going to come from or how they're going to shape out, things you care
Mhm.
about.
Yeah.
But it's like your mind gets in a loop, right? It's in a loop of all the negative things or um, just all the things that can go wrong is
Yeah.
where the anxiety comes from. And I necessarily can't say I have had it consistently, but I do know what you mean when it comes to especially your health and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, right? Like things that
Yeah.
you're used to doing and used to being one way, and
Yeah.
your life is completely changed and shifted, and now you have to think and do things differently, and
Yeah.
anxiety comes from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was important something you mentioned about the fear of the unknown because that's exactly speaking
Mhm.
for myself. And I know how anxiety will manifest differently for each person.
Mhm.
But for me, it's it's all wrapped around fear of not knowing what's on the other side of something
Yeah.
or fear of what's going to happen. So for me, the fear that I'm dealing with right now is the fear of being under anesthesia, not knowing, am I going to wake up,
Yep. Mhm.
like fear of certain surgeries. Like, what if it don't go well? Then what? And I'm down under, will I wake up? Will I do this? Like all the
It's a
what
loop.
ifs
Mhm. Mhm.
that keeps, like, it just clouds my brain and it just takes over. And
Mhm.
I remember leaving the doctor's office and I just was sobbing because just so fearful. And I had to remind myself, like, even when I think about it, I get tearing up right now because I had to remind myself that, Tania, you've faced other tough challenges in your life and you were able to, excuse me, get through those. And this is just one thing that you have to push yourself through as well in order to get on the other side of this, right?
Mhm.
Like, remember how fearful I was of flying? I
I
was
do.
like, I was
I
like,
do.
I'm not going to fly. Um, I tried. I would get to the jet bridge and have like a serious panic attack and turn around and leave. I was like, I'm not flying.
Right.
I remember Villanova was playing in a tournament and they had to play, they're playing Kentucky. And I don't know if you remember this, Shay, but got to the airport, couldn't go, drove myself to Kentucky,
Yeah.
long 10-hour drive. But I have to recall those moments because it was something that was important to me. And then
Love
Mikal
that.
got drafted, then traded to the Suns, and he was on the other side of the world. And I said, I'm not going to let a this this anxiety
Yeah.
get in a way of me seeing my son. And now I have to tell myself this, like, it's bigger than me, and I'm not going to let anxiety not save, like, I'm going to save my life by facing anxiety. Like, I'm not going to allow it to block something that's really important for me because of this immense fear that legit consumes me because I'm just so afraid of that unknown, like you said.
Yeah. And what a time to be alive. There's so many resources now. It's
Mhm.
not stigmatized. Well, maybe it is somewhat, but it's more common to talk about the things that, you suffer with in silence, like anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, you can also share and other people will share their stories now versus you just kind of divulging and someone just listening, although they're going through the same exact thing. I've seen a lot of
Exactly.
people find community in similar
Mhm.
topics,
Yeah.
and I think that, there's just like you can go on TikTok, you can go on YouTube, and you can really type in the things that you're experiencing or what you're going through. And I guarantee you'll find someone who's going to give you the words. And sometimes, again, anxiety can be curbed by just hearing someone else's story and seeing
Yeah.
how they dealt with it to give you ideas on what works for you. So
Mhm.
that I'm so grateful for the resources that we have now in today's
Yeah.
society and kind of where we're at with talking about any kind of issues dealing with mental and um, just ways to cope with it. And so I just encourage you to continue to like find other stories and like you said, you've been doing this for a long time, fighting battle after battle after battle. And I know it
Yeah.
gets exhausting.
It
especially
does.
when you're a very vibrant person like yourself who likes to be up and on the go and is always working, always smiling, always giving. And I know when
Yeah.
you have that on your mind, it's a little bit constricting, a little
And
bit. And
daunting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you're right about the resources. Like there's so many different things. And like one of the things that I need to know, and I know how much, shout out to my little brother Nafis, because he put, he always has something like he posts
Hmm.
about not not allowing yourself to try to handle things on your own,
Hmm.
right? Like understanding that there are resources. Speaking, your that word resource
Yeah.
is that there are resources out there that can help you. So I realized that, what, like this thing is bigger than me, and I might need to talk it out because, you know, of her, I love this her name's Jess Sims. I love her. She's Peloton instructors.
I think
And
she
she
came to
says
OT.
she's a cutie, isn't she?
Oh no,
I'm
maybe it
like,
was Kendra. Is there Kendra one?
is it Kendra? I don't
Anyway,
know. Yeah, I don't know.
that's anyway. Go
Jess
ahead.
Sims, like, well, she says this when she starts any of her routines. Like, I take some of her strength training. I take her strength training. She also does like these bike boot camp classes that I take. I'm sure she teaches more,
Yeah,
but I'm into her strength classes. And she says, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
yeah.
And that just always sits with me. How you do
Hmm.
one thing is how you do everything.
Hmm.
So when I think about anxiety, for me, anxiety is not going to just show up right now, just with this fear of anesthesia. Like anxiety shows up in other areas of my life as well.
Hmm.
And I said that, okay, like I am going to, um, a friend of my mom's sent me a book. It's called Unwinding Anxiety. And I'm going to dive into that. And, I realized that, okay, Tania, like you may need to talk it out. Like,
Hmm.
and get those resources to be able to help me compact this thing and really break it down so that I can understand where is it coming from? How do I deal with it when it starts to rear its ugly head? And
Hmm.
how do I not let it block the things that I know that are good for me?
Hmm.
And I think that it's a lot bigger than just this one thing. And that's what I'm trying to come to grips with so that I can understand how to address it, moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that unknowing part is the lack of information, right?
Yes.
The more information you
Yeah.
have, the more comfortable you can be, and the more
Yes.
connections that your brain can make to, okay, this is what I'm experiencing, and
Yeah.
this is how it's going to play out. These are my scenarios. These are my symptoms. Once you have all that information, then it's not so scary. Just like when you
Yeah.
discover something, in the bathroom by yourself, a mole, a cut, a something, and you just freak out because you think the worst things, right? And
Right.
as women, we have to constantly examine our bodies because it's so sensitive and it changes all the time. And
I
having
know. Wonk
right?
wonk.
And so I can relate to having those anxieties, but thank God I'm like, okay, let me calm down. Like I was telling you before we got on the recording, and I was like, before I freak out, let me relax and let me calm
Yeah.
down and let me
Calm
let me let
down.
me problem solve and go through the process. So
Right.
when I freak out and I like find things on my body or like moles and stuff, I say relax and I call my mom and I say, hey mom, I just found a mole. I'm wondering, and I start asking her questions about us and our family. And she's like, moles are very common. And she'll start telling me if it's this size, if it looks like this, if it's this shape, then you should make a call. And like, so then it's like, okay, stop freaking out and just
Yeah.
get
Stop
the
freaking out.
information, right? Get the information, create a plan,
That's
do
right.
the action, and just continue to observe and watch. And then it's less scary once you can make the connection. Cause I know that sometimes I freak out when I don't have the information.
Yep. You're spot on as always, Shay, because that's when I think back and kind of replay some of the things that I did back when I was being very fearful of flying. I
Mhm.
start to better understand certain reasons, like getting more educated about flying, getting
Data,
more educated about
safer
just
than
like,
driving, stuff like
right,
that.
how many
Mhm.
flights go out in a day
Uh-huh.
and, thinking about how safe it really is and knowing more.
Mhm.
Although, it's not like I'm this great flyer, like, let's go on a plane. I love it.
I know.
But I'm never going to love it. It's just something um, weird to me about this big metal object flying in the sky.
Yeah.
But I think now that I at least know that this is something that I was going with my own um, narrative
You were
of
telling yourself
what
a
flying could
story
be.
that
Yes,
wasn't true.
that it's, yes, ma'am. I was telling myself my version of
Your
what I
version.
believed this story would be, but the story wasn't factual.
Yeah.
And, I remember the doctor telling me about, like, look, this got to get done. It's not like a nice to have. Like, this is a must have to save
Yeah.
your life. Like, you got to put it in that perspective. And he said, look, anxiety, people have it all the time, but when it becomes a real problem is when you let it consume you and allow it to get in the way of things that is that you have to do. Like, that's when it
Yeah.
becomes a problem. That's when you
Yeah.
need to really take a look at it.
Right. Reality
Actually,
versus what your self is telling your story.
yes.
Another way that I see anxiety manifesting too is when the news, fake news, or false news, or even those false infographics online, um, put out things and cause divide between races, between communities, and it gives them that anxiety and fearful of that person or of that race or of that community or of that group. And now these people are fearful that they're going to take over the world and you're not going to have any resources and this person is in the presidency, right? It's like the
Right.
lack of information or the lack of, like, you haven't sat with those people before. You don't know how they are. You don't know how they think. And then also, people are not monoliths and microcosms and things like that. And
Yeah.
I could see anxiety, causing people to be violent, right? Not having the
Mm,
information and being fearful of something. So
being
it's
fearful.
important to get the information, seek the information to curb
Seek
that anxiety.
seek to understand. That's exactly what we have to do.
Mhm,
Seek to understand and do not, and I repeat, do not rely on your own assumptions.
mhm.
Do not rely on your own perceptions
Yeah.
because look, we can know some things, but we don't know all things.
Mhm.
And
Right.
when we start going with our own beliefs, there lies
It's
the
dangerous.
problem,
Mhm,
right? It's very dangerous
mhm.
because I'm sitting here like, oh, I can't do that. What if I don't wake up? Well, it's like, Tania, do you know how many people get put under anesthesia? Do you know the stats that most people do wake up from anesthesia? The problem isn't from the anesthesia. Like, sometimes there's complications with surgery, 100%,
Yeah.
but it's not the anesthesia, sweetie.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
I was telling myself, oh my God. And I was telling the anesthesiologist, I was like, look what happened to Michael Jackson. Like, I don't want that. He's like, yeah, because Michael Jackson, pretty much the doctor, he wasn't like in a hospital, didn't have people like monitoring his blood pressure and every single thing
Right.
that they monitor. And
Right.
someone gave him the propofol, I think that's how
Yeah.
you pronounce it,
Yeah, I think
and like
so.
and like dipped off. Was like, okay, I'm gonna go downstairs, do some stuff. Like, no, we're gonna be looking at your vitals the entire time. And
Right.
don't you worry, if something happens, we got a medicine, we got something to handle it. Like,
Right.
it's very much different than, this is not a Michael Jackson situation.
No, but again, the news and a lot of heightened information, or that is what causes that, right? Seeing the
Yeah,
Michael Jackson story, not getting all the information, not knowing
not
the
knowing.
true, not knowing the truth behind it,
Yeah,
and things that are put out in the media are meant to entertain as
yeah,
well. So those
yeah,
things cause anxiety.
for
Your point.
sure. And then too, it's like, you sent me a really good podcast about how your mind can
You
make you
listen to
sick.
it? Oh
About like
my
how your
God.
mind can make you sick. And
Yes.
this is an example of how when you start letting your mind run with something, it literally can make you sick. Like, I
And it
think back
also can heal you too.
100%. And I can go back to when I was like super scared, like, no, don't give it to me. I don't want it. And my heart started racing. I felt like I was literally going through the physical manifestations of a full blown like anxiety attack, like all those things were happening to me. And this was my mind. running with it. It wasn't something like something happened, like I was having a reaction or something. Like it was my mind making me sick. It was
Yep.
putting my body and through these trials and tribulations
Sending
just because
stresses.
it just a
Yeah.
major stressor,
Sending, yeah,
stress
danger.
signals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
And
like
that's
fight or
why
flight.
exactly, but that's why it's so important to know too the information that if that can make you sick, the
Mm,
thoughts that you think, the words that you speak can heal you and make you better,
yeah.
make you stronger, make you
Yes,
last
makes you
longer, even if you're
positive
going
affirmations. Absolutely.
yes.
That you will
Surrounding
be good.
yourself in good environments, the earth, grounding, taking your
Mm,
shoes off, putting your
that's
feet in
right.
the grass, drinking a lot of water,
Mm,
doing the things that give life, eating electric foods, doing all those things are things that can reverse a lot of the illnesses that we have, but a lot of us don't have the information. And then we also have misinformation
misinformation.
and things out there to entertain us and, get clicks. And we just get caught up in this web of like, oh my God, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy.
Real
It's a
crazy.
good topic. Like, this is very good.
Yeah.
Happens to a lot of us.
I think sometimes we suffer in silence, right? Because especially with anxiety, it's not like something that people can see. Like, unless you are like I was experiencing that kind of full blown anxiety, like attack, and folks that were there, like my mom who was right beside me, could see. But if you're just walking down the street and just say it's like I'm always happy and vibrant, like it's not something that you're gonna be like, oh, there she is. She has anxiety, So it's something that I feel like is easy to suffer in silence because people don't know. And then if you're not taking the necessary steps to get healed, then you're just following yourself, you find yourself on this hamster wheel. You just keep going. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, something that's so small is now so big because you let it get out the way because you weren't willing to deal with the things that you had to do to push past whatever state that you were in.
Right.
I think about, my palms were sweaty, my heart
Mm.
rate was racing, your blood pressure goes up. Like,
Mhm.
think about all the things that are happening to your body. And it's all up here, right? It's all upstairs. It's all in the brain that's telling you
Yeah.
that you can't breathe, you can't do that, but you gotta speak against it. And, this thing is big, right? Tippers. It's like when things are so big, like that's why it's so good to, as Shay mentioned earlier, is utilize those resources that you have in front of you. And sometimes having an amazing therapist that is this neutral third party you can talk to and be vulnerable and open up and be transparent and authentic about what's happening in your life so we can get the help to put us right on the right path to success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think even if you don't talk to someone professionally, you can read, you can make the connection somehow to build up the strength to then talk to someone.
Yeah.
So I know, and I only say that to say like some people are not extreme. Like one day I'm not talking to a therapist, and one day I am. Build up the skills to at least read and get the information and do your due diligence. Sometimes it takes a while, dating wise. You're trying to find a therapist, someone who fits your aesthetic, someone who fits, their voice has to
Who
sound good,
understands
who
you. Yeah.
understands you, who's in the same state as you. It's a process. So,
Yeah.
again, I'm going to be the proponent today of information because that's kind of how I work when I'm trying to figure out my life and figure out the things that I'm dealing with too.
Getting that help when
Getting
you
that help.
need it and not being afraid to raise your hand and say, you know what? Like this is so big that I need help. And not being afraid to raise your hand and say, hello, like this human being over here needs some help and taking a step to doing it. And I think knowledge is always power, right? Like we know that knowledge is power
Perfect. Yes.
and it
Knowledge is
doesn't
power.
and it can really help change your life. I was thinking about I can't remember how I made this connection, but maybe it was through a coworker that I worked with in the past. And the mother was just dealing with a lot of stress. And it was stress of like something personal that happened in the family. And she couldn't get past it. Someone hurt her child. And she could have helped prevent it and didn't. And that guilt of that weighed on her soul, her mind, her spirit, her body, and it consumed her. And
Wow.
you know what that stress did? That stress killed her
Wow.
at a young age because she let it consume her and she didn't get help. She didn't raise her hand. She didn't utilize resources. She tackled that big, scary, aggressive,
Mm.
hardcore situation alone. And I think that's something that we have to do better with tippers is don't try to face these, life will always bring about its own unique challenges,
Mhm.
but don't feel like you have to go at this thing called lifing. I made that word up if it's not a real thing in the dictionary, but don't try to life this thing on your own. Like if there are people around that you can trust and that you love and you're not sure which way to go, like just talk it out and maybe they can help lead you in the right direction for whatever it is. Like maybe this big, hairy, aggressive beast that you're dealing with now is not anxiety, but it's something else that is consuming you. Like
Mhm.
let today be the day you say, you know what, you big, hairy, aggressive beast, I got something for that ass. I'm gonna come for you. I'm gonna stop you in your tracks. I'm gonna let you know that you will not win. You will not overcome. You will not block my blessings. You will not stop me for being the wonderful person that I am. I'm gonna crush you in the dirt where you belong, and I'm gonna take back my life and plow and move forward in the right
Yeah.
direction.
I mean, that's the definition of tipping the scales, right?
Yeah, I like that. Tip, 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 tip. And so, I think, yeah, I hope that you guys, I love like Shay. Shay's the one like when we get sometimes I get feedback. I'm like, oh, that was a little rough. like okay, that was rough. And Shay's like ready for it all. She's like, yeah, come on, like I like it. But I do hope that you guys find the time that we have together meaningful. It very much is meaningful for Shay and I. We want to be a community to kind of bands together and educate each other, learn from one another, give tips that you guys find helpful. And if, we want to laugh and have fun, we want to joke. We just want to look at life through very much a positive lens because, we're only here for a short period of time. And while we're here, we want to make the best of it. So again, like if there are certain things that you guys want to hear from us, you have topics that you want us to discuss, you have an idea, let us know. Like hit us up. One, first and foremost, let's make sure that you are at least following Tip in the Scales wherever you get your podcast. Like check. Make sure you're listening to our episodes. That's important. Go back and listen to more. There's so many great things that are out there that will make you laugh, that will make you cry, and you will have fun. So check out our library of content. And then if you are very much inclined, give us feedback. Let us know what you want to hear and hit us up on the gram at Tipping the Scales or at LaShayla or at Tania L. Rivers. Like, let's communicate. Let's chat.
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. And if you are someone, also, I think it's important to, before we go, like if you're facing anxiety or if you are dealing with a situation and you were able to overcome it, tell us. Like again, Chef Shay and I are not these self-proclaimed experts by any way.
No.
We just share things that are happening in our lives and we talk about how we deal with things because perhaps it will uplift someone else. But if you are experiencing anxiety, or if you had, and you're finding your way on the other side of it, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to kind of share that out with our tippers. That sound okay? That's the deal.
Alrighty.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. We love you and can't wait to do this again for you next week.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.